here or okay.
Jody, Jody's on.
Cool. All right, yeah, so I'm good to go. So we're going to call to order the HARC chair meeting here at what time is it? 9:02. Because we gotta do the kind of bookkeeping things here. No town council on.
I do not see any. No.
Staff, we have Erica, Jonna, always indispensable Piper. I'm Kieran Lennon, vice chair. Second vice chair. Let's be clear about this. So, yeah, did I miss anything for those first things?
Nope.
Okay, then do we have to do public comment on non-agenda items? There we go. Do we have any public to comment on non-agenda items?
We have several people on Zoom, but I'm not certain who might be public.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
hands.
All right,
You have to call for them to raise their hands typically, but I don't see any.
should we move on then?
Yep.
All right, let's go to the public hearing items. Our first project is the Taco Shack. It's continued from the February 17th, 2023 HARC meeting. It's consideration of an application for a small scale new construction in the residential zone district that will contain more than 950 square feet, but less than 2,500 square feet of floor area pursuant to LUC 7-203.B.1.B.1. Legal description is lot 12, the Overlook at Telluride subdivision, PUD, East Telluride Edition, address 755 Primrose Lane, Zone District, Hillside Developing 2, owners, AK Real Estate LLC. Applicant is Bruce Wright, One Architects, staff member, Erica Jensen.
Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Okay. This is the final minor scale review at 755 Primrose Lane. This application was continued from this February 17th HARC chair meeting. No? It doesn't wanna. Oh, there we go. It is located in the Hillside Developing 2 Zone District and Developing Hillside Treatment Area, and it is located outside the historic district. The project description is the new construction of a 995 square foot above grade structure. Condition 1 from the prior hearing was to drastically reduce the size of the decks, especially the first and second level decks. So this is the first level deck. They drastically reduced it. If you can see my cursor on this area, there is still concern about this jut out on the first level. On the second level, they reduced this area drastically, but there still is some concern about the overall size of the second level. From this elevation, you can see that by further reducing the decks, it would help with the mass and scale and stepping down with the hillside. So this area right here and this area right here. Therefore, this condition has been partially retained. Condition 2 was to reduce the roof overhangs on the south facade, and the roof overhangs were reduced in size. Condition 3 was to revise the metal panels to be applied in a more traditional hierarchy with lighter material used above the metal panels. And condition 4 was to reduce the amount of metal siding and incorporate more traditional materials. Condition 5 was to ensure that the chosen siding material does not extend to the ground and that there is a clear distinction between the foundation and wall materials. Horizontal wood siding has been added. You can see from the front facade, there's now horizontal siding on the upper level, the second level, and it also exists on the sides. It has created a more traditional hierarchy, and it did incorporate more traditional materials. On some of the house, there's not a clear distinction between the siding material and the foundation material, so the condition 5 was retained. Condition 6 was to reduce the size of the windows on the east and south facades to be a more traditional size. The windows on the east facade were reduced in size, but there are still windows on the south facade that cause concern over light spill. So this condition has been retained for the south facade. Condition 7 was to reduce the size of the driveway and area of paving. Modular pavers were added to reduce the area of paving. And condition 9 was to consider adding planters or plant materials on the street side of the development to better blend with the hillside. Plant materials were added near the front entry as well as on the second level deck. Condition 8 was to reduce / revise the size of the retaining wall on the east elevation to better contour the site. There were small changes made, a little bit of more, my cursor keeps freezing, but a little bit more stepping was included, but it does not seem to have reduced the size or revised it in a way so that it better contours to the site. If this side more closely resembled the west elevation, then it would be a better representation of contouring to the site. So that condition was retained. Condition 10 was to remove the sconces on the upper level decks unless required for egress, which the applicant did. Condition 11 was to show the location of utilities on final CA plans, which has been done. And condition 12 was to indicate where bicycle parking is located, which has also been done. There were 2 new conditions added. One was to reduce the number of fixtures as to not light the same area. And the other was to revise the trash enclosure to be open on 2 sides to ensure that per the land use code, it is not enclosed space. The applicant removed the sconces on the upper level decks and replaced them with step lights, but now the number of step lights seems to be lighting the same area. The trash enclosure is currently enclosed space because it is only open on one side. It needs to be open on 2 sides so it is not counted as enclosed space and can remain in the setback. This sliding door on the trash enclosure also needs to be somewhat open and cannot be a solid material. And staff feels that the applicant has made enough changes and revisions that this application is approvable. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant who is on Zoom.
Great, thank you. Only one real question, and it relates back to the decks again. I believe your note here on the first level with the protruding element.
Yeah.
So it's that little piece at the edge. Was it width? You want it brought back, correct? That's what.
Yeah.
Not so much the width.
The protrusion.
Protrusion.
Yes.
Not the width of the protrusion,
Mhm.
what I was saying. Okay. And then the second level deck, it's kind of the same question. Are we dealing with, in your mind, is there a dimension which should come in more? I mean, we generally inside the decks, the corners of the building, but this is a little bit of a different animal for that.
I think it's untraditional to see a deck run the entire facade of a building. It does run the entire facade on the first level as well, but I think with the shed roof form, that breaks it up a little bit. I think on the second level, it's untraditional to see it the full facade, so it might need to come in both directions.
Okay. Great, that's all I have. Thank you. So we can hear from the applicant now.
Good morning. You guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Let's see here. We reviewed Erica's notes. Erica, we sent you that package last night. I'm not seeing it here today, but it did address some of the things that you had brought up in these 6 conditions that you're proposing.
Do you want to share your presentation?
You know what? I still don't have that move.
Okay, do you want me to share it for you?
You could pull it up as we go through it. Really, what
Okay.
I wanted to do, we made drastic changes. We went through every one of the conditions, and a lot of them in the first review weren't redundant, but there was a lot of overlap. So I think that we've, as well, agreeing with you, I think we've addressed these, and I think substantially. And then getting in the specifics of what we have left to work with, this package that we're looking at. Just take the conditions as they are, but as we're looking at light spill. I know you guys aren't reviewing windows in your usual manner since we're not in the historic district and it's a light spill condition. And I feel that we've done about everything that we can. We've reduced drastically the windows on the town facing side that you can see there, and even further more so than the package that you would see received originally. This more recent one, we just took out a few or minimized a few other ones. Added some planting. We've added the landscape boxes at the corners and the returns. We didn't run it all the way across the facade on the south, just so that we could break that mass up. But most of the thing that we really realized is when you're looking at this house, like the presentation, the elevations, you can see it from someplace that you could never see it in real life. So the way that this thing is stepped back, if you look at the profile of it, we're somewhere between 10 and 15 feet below the max allowable height. And so the one thing we are concerned with this approach, it's really low pro already. We know that the guys coming in building to the sides of us might not take this same approach, and they might just go more vertically instead of stepping it all the way back into the hillside. So we're really relying on the windows to the south as the one view that we know that we can preserve in the future. And so we've stuck this thing in the hillside as deep as possible. We've created these decks that I believe are nearly, if not totally invisible from anywhere a pedestrian could check this out. And even in going around the town, I know that it said in the guidelines, this is up on the hillside and visible from town. But when you go look for it from town, it's really not that visible. You really don't hardly see it except for an intersection of Main and a couple of streets, maybe Pinion, maybe Laurel. Other than that, it's really obscured. And you couldn't tell us so much until that house started being constructed that's just below us. You'll have a hard time finding that as well. So I just wanted to say that as an overall, I think this impact is very low and designed into it. And then getting into the size of the decks, I went into, I thought we addressed pretty well DH 18A, and there's 3 and 4 that are noted. And so these things, this is for mass, scale, and form. 3A reads, buildings that cut into slopes are encouraged where they can help minimize the perceived mass and scale. So I think we can all agree that we've done that. And then A4 says step buildings down at hillside edges to minimize visual impacts and reduce the apparent height. So I think those two things have been more than adequately addressed. And there's no mention, like what's nice about this area, there's no mention of traditional deck copying historic proportions. And there's really no mention of a dimension, a square footage, a percentage, any of that. So whether these are decks that you can't see, but these guys can appreciate because they have no flat outdoor space since they're on a 48% steep lot, this becomes their outdoor space, right? And it's either like we had at the bottom, we had I thought a nice deck for the guest bedroom at level 1. And we simply turned that into that shed roof, which I don't think changes it dramatically. It takes away the deck space. Maybe it helps the scale a little bit there at the bottom, but we would respectfully request that you guys don't interject reducing these decks that we've really tried to design to be invisible. And I can't find any place that it's appropriate that you guys would have review and authority over that. So that said, we did reduce them and simplify them. I'm happy with the changes that we've made. I think they are successful relative to your conditions. Number 2 was the siding materials. And as Erica pointed out, we did add the wood siding. This would be a stained siding, not a painted. It's fairly close in these generic renderings, but it would be something natural, neutral color tones that would recede. The distinction between the siding materials between the ground and the foundation level, again, we've made an attempt to do that. If you look at the retaining walls and the steps that are in them, it's it's steep. We had this retaining wall set parallel to the top of grade. And then thought maybe you guys would be looking more for that stepped wall, where you could kind of relate to how they would build it. They wouldn't build it on an angled retaining wall. But regardless, we've made attempts there. I can't really see where you can tell the difference between the siding material and where it enters the site. Again, just because of the steepness and because of the width of this lot, I don't think it's perceivable, but again, we're open to any other suggestions if you think we're missing a spot. That's not a big deal. Reducing the size of the windows on the south facade to be a more traditional size. This kind of comes back. I know you guys are reviewing this based on potential light spill to town, more so than the windows themselves. And if you look at what the guidelines recommend, again, we've done sort of every version of what the town has recommended to mitigate any light spill. We've made a conscious decision to reduce the windows that face towards town, as we mentioned. The ones that remain that face south are under, I think it's a 4-foot overhang at the living. And then we reduce, there's a little outdoor dining table. We had, I believe, a 12 or 14-foot overhang there before, and we've taken that back to like 8. That with the planters, obviously this thing will have interior shades and whatnot because it's going to get blasted by the sun all day. But I do feel in the overall approach, this is very in keeping with window to wall ratios if you look at all of them. And there's kind of a funny note. I probably know the person who put this note in there, but it said something about for this light spill, consider minimizing windows on the south facade. And I think it's silly. I understand that they don't want the light spill, but these only have windows on the south facade. We have 0 windows, obviously, on the north. We have very minimal on the east and west because of the way that it's cut in. So, of course, it's the views, it's the sun, it's the passive solar, it's everything to reduce utilities. We're really hoping that you guys can see what we've done and approve the windows as is. The number of fixtures, there's no more sconces. I believe there's a down light at the entrance at the ground level. And we can work with you guys to reduce those numbers. Again, you can't see the light source. It's kind of a low glow, and it doesn't project out from the building outward. We actually put it in the guardrail, pointed back towards the house, again, just to minimize that effect. Revise the size of the retaining wall on the east. And so this one, we've just got that one spot. We need building code to get egress and light and ventilation. In the most recent plan on the east, we've stepped the retaining wall yet again over what we did at the original submittal a couple weeks ago, or the resubmittal. And it works still. It's kind of getting close and a little bit awkward from that egress standpoint. There you go. So you can kind of see we raised the window up. It still meets code, but it's not as big as it used to be. And just stepped it a little bit more. It doesn't change what is required to hold the earth back, actually lower. If you go down to that lower bedroom, that guy. The other ones up above, we got the barbecue, and then we added a planter, and then another slope, and then another planter at the top level. But down there seems to be the tallest section of wall, but also the most invisible. Faces away from town, and it backs in underneath that little section of deck that connects the kitchen to the deck. So I see it as the condition on here. I really don't think the actual impact to town is measurable. And that's it. More than anything, I would say I really went through, and if you look at the narrative response, we try to put in the actual verbiage of all of these design guidelines. And I believe if you read these, and I know that it's been interpreted for the 30 years that I've been go into HARC. But it's definitely, I believe that this design is well within all of the guidelines and the intents, really regardless of who's interpreting it. So if I'll leave it at that and answer any questions you might have.
Cool. Thanks for that presentation, Bruce. Humor me for a moment. And let's just say that condition 1 is left in with the decks size. How do you think you might achieve reducing them?
That's a good question. I mean, what would you guys achieve by us reducing them is, I guess, what I would need to know. We can simply make them smaller. You can make no decks, make them all roofs. Now the people can't walk outside and sit outside, and you guys say that they're too big, but are they? What makes them too big? You can't see them. What if we turned all these roofs or decks into roofs? Does that make it better to the town? Does that change anything? I don't really think so. Like the terrace is the roof. So if you guys somehow demanded, and I'm not sure what grounds you would have, we would simply just keep making them smaller.
Cool. That's all the questions I have.
Yeah.
Is there public comment, right? Is there any public comment?
I've seen them.
Cool. All right. To start with, I do appreciate the progress that has been made on the application. Clearly, you did take to heart what we were talking about with the decks in particular, but I do tend to agree with the staff condition about reducing them further. I know you're talking about what authority we might have or what guidelines, and I don't think there's much controversy in terms of the guidelines that are cited here. When you have these decks that are protruding so far out, it does counteract. What you have is a pretty good attempt with wall planes to kind of contour along the hillside. And you have decks jutting out from that. It counteracts that to a degree, especially where you're looking at towards the edges of the project where the house meets the hillside, and you see these abrupt jutting out with decks. You want something that, you know, can be smoother there. To your point of when you were in your narrative, I guess more than anything, it isn't necessarily the decks themselves. It's an edited element to the building. It doesn't need to be a deck. That's not what the guideline that's cited here is talking about. This is talking about mirroring the hillside better, or contouring towards the hillside better. I think reducing the size of the decks will achieve that. If you want some kind of a cut and dry rule in terms of what degree they need to be cut to better achieve that, I think we have some flexibility there. But just keep in mind when we're talking about how well a project mirrors a hillside, or, you know, in policy 18, the policy introduction, we're talking about visually overpowering forms or designs. That's all relatively subjective as well. And in the opinion of both myself and staff, this project can improve there. So I'm going to leave that in. Regarding the windows, it's not just light spill. If you look at the window policies that are cited there, large expanses of glass are inappropriate. Windows need to be cut to a pedestrian scale. That's DH 25 A and B. It's pretty cut and dry there. Light spill is a concern, but adhering to that policy is also a concern. And it's a concern we've generally had within HARC for pretty much any of these projects up on the hillside. So this isn't new in any way, shape, or form. So I think Erica's conditions all generally are spot on. I agree with them. I would suggest that if you do have some question or don't quite understand how a guideline applies, you can always reach out to staff and they'll tell you. And this is not an invitation for a debate per se. But if the guidelines cited, which both staff and I agree with, are causing some kind of confusion, just reach out and I'm sure Erica will be happy to address them. So I will also go along with Erica's suggestion to approve this though. Because I think you are close. I do think you're close. I think there are some improvements that can be made. So with that, I guess I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. It's so weird not to. Ghost HARC, do you have anything to say? All right. I move to approve the minor scale application at 755 Primrose, Lot 12, the Overlook at Telluride subdivision / PUD, East Telluride addition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated March 17th, 2023, and with the following conditions 1 through 6 as stated. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held March 17th, 2023, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days of this approval, or this approval becomes null and void. Unless otherwise indicated, the revised drawings submitted for a certificate of appropriateness must be a complete set with any changes to drawings clouded and labeled. Any changes to the drawings beyond the conditions of approval may result in more than one submittal being required. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiernan.
What this is. Okay, good morning. We'll continue with the public hearing item on the Roma Unit A West Wall alterations, consideration of minor scale.
Before we move on, do you want to just mention your recusal from the
Oh,
first item?
no one said so? Oh, okay. Sorry, I was recused from the first project that Karen took over because of proximity. So the next item is the Roma Unit A West Wall alterations, consideration of minor scale application for alterations to a rated structure that will not increase the floor area pursuant to land use code 7203A3C2, lot 77R, block 7, town of Telluride, 133 East Colorado, historic commercial district. Owner is NSAC Inc., Colorado Corporation, applicant Sante Architects, and staff member Jana Wenzel. Jana.
Thank you. So this application is for alterations to the historic Roma building. The Roma building is located on the north side of Colorado Avenue, just to the west of Spruce Park. There are 3 buildings facing Colorado Avenue, which were built around 1885, but they were remodeled as one interior space in the 1980s. Since 1983, the town, the town of Telluride has owned an architectural facade and preservation easement on the building, which prevents the alteration of the historic facades, but doesn't include the west facade of the Roma or the stone building in the back. There is a large 2-story stone addition at the north, which is dwelling units. All the existing buildings on this site are really contributing. As you may remember, in December, HARC approved the new construction of an addition to the west, which is called Unit C on the same property. This project proposes alterations to the west wall of the historic Roma building.
which include the removal of the non-historic shed addition, the non-historic landing and stairs and handrail going up to that addition, the replacement of 2 non-historic windows with fire-rated windows, which you can see better in these photos, and replacement of the non-historic door with a fire-rated door. Also, the siding on this west wall is proposed to be replaced, which is addressed in the only condition that I proposed in the memo, which was to replace the siding on the west wall in kind with wood siding to match. If required for building or fire code, which is not clear yet, but if wood siding is not permitted, a composite siding to match the historic material may be reviewed and approved by staff.
We don't know that.
Well, I don't think that the building and fire code review has been completed yet.
Okay.
As you remember, the addition will be, this side of the building will be part of the breezeway that goes between this and the
Yeah.
addition. We're hoping that the wood siding will be adequate. The buildings will need to be sprinklered, so hopefully that will be
Okay.
enough. But we did want to allow for an option.
A way forward. Okay.
Yes, and it would just be this, the portion of the west wall that would be required for fire code.
Okay.
JJ Richardson is representing the applicant team. He is on Zoom. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any others.
I have no questions. I'm very familiar with this. It just was a few months ago we passed this, so it's
Yep.
pretty straightforward. But be glad to hear from the applicant. JJ, if you have some comments, glad to hear them. I don't have any questions of you.
Yeah, this is just really trying to clean up the wall to allow for future construction adjacent. So we're just trying to improve the existing conditions to allow an adjacent building. And that's John's pictures explain that we're just trying to really clean it up. That's kind of the main point.
Okay.
But thank you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Okay, any public comment? Electronically, raise your hand. You're online, but I don't see any. Okay. I concur with staff, so I'm going to move to approve the minor scale application for alterations to the rated building at 133 East Colorado, Unit A, Lot 77R, Block 7, Town of Telluride, in the amendment to the CA of number 11076, based on the findings of the staff memo dated March 17, 2023. With condition 1 as stated. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held, excuse me, on March 17th, 2023. No such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. The revised plans incorporating the conditions of this approval shall be submitted within 60 days, or this approval becomes null and void. The rest as written, so it is approved. And sorry.
Oh, shoot.
All right. The next project, which we haven't seen for 2 years, is the Minervic Residence Consideration Amendment to CA 10666 that does not constitute a vested site-specific development plan for Land Use Code 7203B3D3. Legal description is Block 18, Lot 10R, East Telluride Edition, 617 East Columbia, Zone District Residential, owner MJM Investment Trust, applicant Matt Lee, staff member John Wenzel. And it looks like Chris is here to actually
I'm
represent.
not as good looking as Matt, I'm sorry.
Oh,
You'll have to stick with me.
okay. So John,
Have his eyes. Yeah.
So I'll just do a brief
Yeah.
introduction and then you can,
I have to say, this is the simplest, narrowest issue I've ever adjudicated, but it seems to be.
yeah, so I
Interesting.
will explain how we arrived here.
Okay.
Just a brief introduction to the site, which is 617 East Columbia. It was a formerly vacant lot in this residential neighborhood on the north side of Columbia Avenue. HARC approved the new construction on January 22nd, 2020. There have been 2 CA amendments issued since then for minor revisions to the facades. This proposal is for CA amendment number 3 to revise the type of stone veneer, to reduce the roof overhang, and to omit 1 skylight. Reducing the roof overhang and omitting the 1 skylight are consistent with the guidelines. We are here today because the applicants have proposed to staff a revised stone material to be used as a veneer at the garage, the wall facing the stairs, and much of the first level. The new material is a cut gray limestone in long rectangular units. There's a sample, which you noticed when you came in next to your seat. Staff elevated this request to the chair because this new stone material doesn't appear to reflect the native nature of the hillside. In the application, it appears from the photos provided that it just lacks the texture and color variations, which was found in the approved stone originally. You're right, this is a very narrow review, but I will say that originally when they brought this to my attention, I was concerned about the color, and HARC has had many applications recently on the hillside and has been sensitive to the materials used on the hillside so that they blend with the natural character of the hillside. This one concerned me originally for the color. When they brought the sample, I am less concerned about the color. I feel like it may blend into the hillside okay, but I am concerned about the unit sizes and the texture and the, I guess, application or installation of it. And I'm concerned that from the photo, again, it's a very small representation, although Chris has brought us some larger photos, which is great. I'm concerned it may read more like board form concrete because it doesn't have much texture. There will be very fine mortar joints and lack of variation in color. So my sense is that the limestone material itself might be appropriate if the application is revised, meaning that the unit size, the bond pattern, and mortar joints are made to be a little bit more traditional. The proposed application is very, very contemporary, and because of the amount proposed being used, I'm afraid it will affect the overall mass and scale as well, appearance of mass and scale. So that's why we're here. Chris Chafin is here to provide some more information, but I'm happy to answer any questions at this moment.
So 2884 is clear on the dimensions, you know, it should be more traditional, but the texture and the relief you feel falls short of traditional.
I guess unfortunately, we were shown a material originally that felt like it had the character that would suit the hillside. And so now, of course, the comparison is to that. That was more rustic, natural stone in more colors and shapes and textures suiting the hillside. And this feels very manufactured. I realize it's a natural material, but I think the unit size and the textures feels very, very manufactured.
Okay.
And less natural than we might want to see.
Okay.
So I was uncomfortable approving it. That's why we're here.
Okay. I don't have any questions, so
Okay,
we'll hear
thank
from
you.
you after. Chris,
Great,
fire away.
good morning. So I'm gonna leave addressing color and tone of the stone to, if you have any questions about that, I can run through all of the examples of why we feel like the color and tone is appropriate. What I'm hearing is Donna's much more comfortable with that. So I'll sort of take your lead to come back to me if I need to address that. I'm going to share my screen if I could.
Could you start out with just, electrical curiosity? What's the driver of this? You had a beautiful stone and you were approved, and what triggered this?
Yeah, so the, good question, and let me, if I could do. Okay, so, as you will recall, this was a very complex, application that spanned over, several years, and I think there was, in some sense, some, maybe some pilot error by the architect and the team, where we had moved to a different stone, and the renderings that we had throughout the application actually reflected a different color than the approved stone that you can see right there. That approved stone was from a Mountain Village home, the Baldwin residence, and it does read as very monolithic, actually, from the street. And even as you get up to it, the mortar joints are so tight that it feels monolithic. And what we're proposing is something that I believe has a more traditional feel. You can see with the coursing, you can feel the horizontal striations through it. Our intention is absolutely for this stone not to be monolithic, and so we would want to work to make sure it doesn't read as monolithic. That's not the intention.
Excuse me, just make sure I get this off the top. When I'm looking at A303, just like you are here, up close, it's easier, but the old limestone was very variegated, and yes, it was laid horizontal, but what's on the top is the proposed limestone, which looks smooth, almost masonry like on the top.
Yeah, this is what's proposed,
Yeah,
and so you can see the horizontal coursing to it,
yeah.
and it is not it's not a absolutely flat, and you can see from the sample that there's some variation to it. You can see one of the sides, whereas this is much more massive and very tight lines to it. So that was our thing. To answer your question, that was our design move to what I feel like was a little bit more of a traditional application. And so that's really where we had headed. We do not want this to come across as monolithic. So if that occurs with either grout or chiseling of the face of the stone, there could be ways, I think, to address that. With regards to the coursing, so the material that you have would be on this sheet. I can move my cursor. This capstone piece right here. These pieces are I believe 6 to 7 inch pieces. I just did a very cursory tour this morning around town, and so this stone right here, this is in the historic residential district, which I think of as being more restrictive than east-west. I think this is 802 East Columbia. This stone here is 7.5 inches, just as a sense of sizing for coursing. And this was marked, this is not part of the applicant, is what was submitted.
Okay, yeah.
That's just what I grabbed this morning. Here's a home on Columbia as well in the historic residential district. It's a base material, so it's, and albeit a different application, but these are also in excess of 7 inches in height. And this is a building that's being constructed right now just to the west of 802 East Columbia, And this also shows some stone where you see the size of the stone being that. I just use that as a couple of examples of there are some larger stone being applied, but I guess the point I want to drive home is we're willing to work with and interested in working with staff to make sure this isn't a monolithic feeling structure. I also wanted to point out that we on the north gable have this material right here has not been identified yet. Before it was submitted, the proposal was a flint material, which staff felt very strongly was not an appropriate material. The owner and the interior designer were pretty focused on it and wanted us to submit that as a material to see if it might get through. And with the direction of Matt and my encouragement, we had to back off from that. So while I'd rather have this as a material that we were proposing just for simplification, that is still a TBD. And part of that is because of what this other stone will be, will direct
Is it?
what this is.
Okay.
I do have an example of what we would like to propose there. If it's okay to get your feedback, if it's not
Well,
appropriate.
I wouldn't mind, but if it's not on the agenda, I don't think I'm allowed to comment, am I? Or can I, John? I mean, I don't know that it hurts, but you tell me if I'm not allowed to.
Is it part of this amendment or will it be another amendment?
It would be a future.
So then we can.
CA,
Okay.
yeah, sorry.
Well, that's all right.
I'd like to kill two birds with one
Just
stone,
wanted to
but
bring it up and.
it's coming. Okay,
Understood.
and hopefully you and staff can decide
Yes,
that.
hopefully we.
I'm confident. We'll get it.
Okay,
Okay, so that north gable TBD skylight has been admitted, represent part of the application.
we can allow that.
So hopefully that's a few brownie points there.
Like this.
But yeah, and the skylight was never there as something as trade bait. So
Great bait.
it was just something that came out, and then the reduction on the roof overhang, that's been approved.
Okay.
So that's really where we are. We feel like this stone is a appropriate stone. And to the degree that there are concerns with perhaps a grout or facing or something like that, we're certainly happy to work with that.
Okay, so my questions would be, I appreciate you bringing a sample, because when I first looked at this, it did look on the photo monolithic, the proposed stone. And part of that's grout lines, but what were the old pieces? How long were those? The limestone, how long were those, the shape?
I mean,
Past.
that photo was the only thing that we we never even
Okay,
frankly had a
got to it.
sample board or.
Okay, and then I just want to be razor sharp, that I understand where all the stone is going.
Yeah, so.
You could summarize that.
And I've got some Lumion imagery, which I'm happy to.
Yeah,
share.
just,
So here on the south facing elevation, this is the garage right here.
Yeah.
So you've got it here and then these stairs coming up and then this facing here and this facing here.
okay, and that's all the higher it goes.
That's right. This right here is actually, Aaron, it shows a stone pattern, but that is not.
Okay, and you don't have a rendering showing, I mean, you've just explained exactly where it is, but you don't have a rendering showing it, do you?
Yeah,
What-
I do.
Did I see that?
Yeah, here we go.
Can you zoom in on that, Chris? Yeah, thank you, as much as you can. I'm in the fourth quarter. Okay, I don't need binoculars, but
There you
Okay.
go.
yeah, okay, so up the stairs, around the garage. And nowhere on the, below the big deck,
This right
oh,
here.
just at the
Yeah,
base,
so
oh,
that's-
going up,
that's
yeah.
dark, yeah.
It frames the windows on the top too? Also,
No, it does not frame the windows up here.
I mean, on the bottom, does it?
Right here.
Yeah, does it frames that door? Under the deck, right? It frames that out. Yeah, oh, I see it.
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Is it also on the sides?
Right here, yeah, and then, here, let me. You want me to go around the building to help?
Oh, well, we know the north side's not in play, but what's on the east side? Yeah. How much of this goes to the east side?
Let's use the. That's the north side,
Uh-huh.
peak view at a potential new material. So this side really will not be seen,
No,
but this shows.
but it's at the base, yeah.
Yeah, it's at the base.
Okay,
right
so
there.
basically, and the same on the east, well, east and west
Yeah,
facades.
and then. Oops. I guess I don't have the west side, but I can show you on the elevation where that is.
It's just down below, just like the
It's
other
down
sides.
below.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
framing windows, not solid walls.
no, right here. This is the wall right here. But it's not going to be an apparent wall from
Right, the street, yeah.
from the street.
No, I'm just
Yeah,
more worried about the south facade to look and
right, appropriate.
let's see what questions were. So. I mean, this piece looks more variegated than. This stacking photo. But I do. I'm not trying to deliberate. I'm gonna ask you a question about the size and traditional shapes. So what options do you have besides this? So longitudinal that and or, you know, if it could be laid, as you say, A, with bigger grout lines, B, staggered. You know, I think the staggered pieces, but is this coming more
Yes.
rectangular shapes? I mean,
No, that's a good question. It's certainly not intended to be just one line. So so you can see here's a line right here. So that could be more pronounced.
yeah. Does it come in different shapes though than this linear piece?
It could, yeah.
And or,
Could.
well, what I was
I mean,
thinking of,
It could be, a variation, but the idea is. Yeah, this is to have a pattern like this,
Mhm.
but it could be more brick-like so that it doesn't just read as one long thing.
yeah. And could there be, do they make it manufactured in less linear, like if you could vary the sizes of the pieces and you expose larger grout lines, I think we would see less monolithic no matter what. And I'm not saying I don't, I think color, I'm not gonna ask it, I mean, I would normally adjudicate that, but I think to me, looking at this piece, I don't have the old piece in front of me, but then again, I think this has a fair amount of variation. But I think if I were to approve this, I would want to know what sizes, alternative sizes, so you could mix them and or maybe that messes up your plan. So if you have a longitudinal piece like this, could there be a couple more rectangular or almost not quite square pieces, underneath the next layer? Could it be varied? And larger grout lines. Those are the two things that come to my mind. But I don't know what this is manufactured in besides this. How many, what is this, 28-inch piece or whatever it is?
Right, I think where there would be variety is more in the height.
Oh,
I think there are a lot of,
okay.
there are a lot of examples through town where there's horizontal stacking that's occurring, and then other examples where it's mixed.
Well,
So,
I looked at a lot of that horizontal stacking in what you did provide, and of course you just showed some other photos, but to me, it was like, it was all a little smaller wall and not up like just the base foundation or ancillary like the stairways, you know, the guidelines allow, but not up and framing around the windows as much in those photos of other existing examples, so we can try to be consistent. But I think so what you think is that they can manufacture it in different thicknesses, not necessarily different lengths.
well, I mean, certainly you could do different lengths as well.
Okay. So
You could take a 48-inch piece and cut it in half, for instance.
yeah. To vary. Okay. Okay. So let's see. So I think I'm okay with the stone. But I 100% agree with staff. It doesn't look traditional and just a layer cake here that, and again, your stated goal is you don't want it to be monolithic, but I think it looks more monolithic than the guidelines would call traditional on 28.4 found traditionally, and that's what it says. So I don't have any other questions. Any public comment? So I really don't want to just like continue this. If we could approve it and maybe modify this condition, and then staff could say that they feel confident when it comes back and you could see it. Of course, and then if I need to see it, I'd be glad to see it again. But I before, and therefore I'm wondering if I'm right about without seeing it.
You will need to see it.
Oh, it's going to come back to me anyway.
Yes.
Okay. For the CA signature. So, yeah, I mean, it's just like we traditionally do. So I think, let me modify the motion just a bit and see if we can get there together.
Okay.
I move to approve the amendment to the CA 10666 at 617 Columbia Avenue, block 18, lot 10R, East Telluride Edition, based on the findings in the staff memo dated March 17, 2023, the following condition. Number one, as modified, and I will read it as modified, revise the stone veneer to be more traditional in unit size, consistent with EWT 28A4, period. Revise the laying of the stone to have larger, more pronounced grout lines to preclude a monolithic look, period. And also vary, I'll just say, the sizes of the stone, so they are not all linear and of the same size, to further preclude a monolithic look. Okay. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided, public hearing held on March 17, 2023, with no such hearing provided as required by land use code. Revised plans incorporating these conditions approval shall be submitted within 60 days, or the approval becomes null and void, and the rest as written in the motion there. So let's try one more time. Hopefully we can get there, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Good luck. When's the completion date?
Today. Or do you
Yeah,
come
I
back?
can carry it out.
When? Oh, yeah.
Need to-
What? Hey, when's the
Work.
completion date? I ride my bike by there all the time. I was,
I think 2028.
what?
No, I'm just kidding.
That's the medical center. Okay. Okay. All right. Our last two public hearing items, start with the Littman.
Mark, can we open these at the same time?
Sorry,
Can we open these two items at the
Sure.
same time.
Sure.
Their
I mean, the conditions are the same.
their conditions are very similar. They're by the same applicant and design team. So my presentation contains both.
No, it's a great efficiency. I'll read them both in the record
Perfect.
at once. So we are going to review items 4 and 5 simultaneously as they are nearly identical and the conditions are the same.
Yeah.
It's Lippman Residence 2R. Consideration of a minor scale application for new construction in the hillside developing one zone district, which is located outside the THLD, but within the HPOD. And will contain 950 square foot or more of floor, but not more than 2,500 square foot per land use code 7203B1B1. Legal description is lot 2R, Butcher Creek. Address is 857 Butcher Creek. The zone district is Hillside Developing 1. Owner Butcher Creek, Pennsylvania, LLC. Applicant Matt Garcia Design and staff member Erica Jensen. And we will simultaneously do the second project from this group, the Lippman Residence 1R. And the rest of the condition or the descriptions are the same, except this is 877 Butcher Creek. And the same group, same presenters and staff member Erica Jensen.
Great, thank you. This is the final minor scale review at 857 and 877 Butcher Creek. The pictures and examples shown in the presentation are from both projects, so just keep that in mind. These projects are located in the Hillside Developing 1 zone district and Developing Hillside Treatment Area. They are located outside the historic district. Both lots slope steeply from north to south, and some of the dimensional limitations of these projects are determined by the Butcher Creek PUD. At 857 Butcher Creek, the project is the minor scale new construction of a 2,490 square foot above grade structure. And at 877 Butcher Creek, the project is the minor scale new construction of a 2,395 square foot above grade structure. Condition 1 is to revise the terracing and retaining walls to respect the steep hillside and better contour to the natural topography. Condition 3 is to revise the retaining walls / terrace walls to better contour to the site, therefore reducing the number and height. The proposed cut and fill does not respect the hillside and natural features on site, and instead of maintaining natural grade, a large number of terraces are used. You can see that in this picture here, the red line is the natural grade of the site, and the black is the terracing that's proposed, and this is consistent on all sides of the project. As you can see, it's very different from the proposed grade, which does not align with the design guidelines in this treatment area. Also, many of the retaining walls are over 5 feet, with the tallest being over 15 feet. The number and size of retaining walls is untraditional and causes concern over maintaining the natural topography. And you can see in this picture here, the retaining walls between the two sites are numerous and highly landscaped and very untraditional for a hillside location. Condition 2 is to revise the retaining walls nearest to the street on the south facade to better step down with the hillside. One is, they're both very tall, with the largest being over 15 feet. And since they're closest to the street, it increases the apparent height of the building and negatively affects the pedestrian scale. They're from the street, these retaining walls are an overpowering building form. Condition 4 at 877 is to reduce the size of the first level deck, especially the wraparound design on the east elevation. And condition 4 at 857 is to reduce the size of the first level deck, especially the wraparound design on the east and west elevations. It's untraditional to see decks this large that wrap around the entire facade. Condition 5 is to reduce the roof overhangs on the south facade. The buildings do step down well with the hillside, but the roof overhangs reduce the perceived stepping down, and reducing these overhangs would highlight the lower profile of the building. Condition 6 is to revise the foundation material dimensions to be similar to what was seen historically. And condition 7 is to ensure that the chosen siding materials do not extend to the ground and that there's a clear distinction between the foundation and wall materials. While the materials are applied in a traditional way with stone on the foundation level and siding above, The dimensions of the stone veneer are not similar to what was seen historically. These are the two examples on both buildings. The material is very skinny linear stone, which gives the appearance of siding instead of stone. And then it's unclear in some areas if there is a foundation material or if the chosen siding material just extends all the way to the ground.
I've seen this before. Okay,
Deja vu. Condition 8 is to remove or revise the materials on the front yard planters to better blend with the hillside. These front yard planters appear unusually formal for this treatment area, and since they are bore form concrete, it seems to increase the amount of paving at the front of the lot. Condition 9 is to reduce the size of the doors on the first and second level. These doors are very large and cause concern over light spill as they face south, especially on this first level. The doors extend from the floor to ceiling, and even though they're 2/3 light, it is a large amount of glazing. Condition 10 is to remove the recessed can lights and wall sconces on upper level decks unless required for egress. Only step lights are permitted on upper level decks. Condition 11 is to reduce the number of fixtures as to not light the same area. The lighting proposal has a number of fixtures close together. Reducing the number will minimize the impact of light spill. Condition 12 is to revise the deck railings to be a mix of transparent and solid. Currently, the deck railings are transparent. It would be beneficial for light spill to have a mix. We're not requesting full solid deck railings because that might increase the mass and scale, but a mix would be good. Condition 13 is to provide a planting schedule of final CA plans, and condition 14 is show the location of utilities. Lastly, condition 15 is to revise the trash enclosure to be open on 2 sides to ensure that per the land use code, it is not enclosed space. The trash enclosure is currently enclosed space because it is only open on 1 side. It needs to be open on 2 sides, so it's not counted as enclosed space and can remain in the setback. Also, their sliding door needs to be open and cannot be a solid material. The proposed new construction could be consistent with the character of the area with the listed conditions, but there are concerns about the grading and terracing in regards to maintaining the perception of natural topography on the site. The developing hillside design guidelines focus on respecting the natural environment and minimizing the visual impacts of development. The large retaining walls and terracing in this application greatly impact the hillside and do not blend with the natural environment. While the design of the house is substantially compliant, the protection of the hillside topography is not. You can approve, continue, or elevate this project if you find it necessary. And I'm happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicants who are on Zoom.
I don't have any questions, and
Okay.
as the applicant's getting ready to share their screen, I think you did a good job. I mean, 1 through 15, if you look at the last year and a half and even the last 3 meetings in the full HARC, they're all issues that are faced on the hillsides,
Yes.
and every one of them has complied. The good news is every one of them has got through, and hopefully yours will too. But I think you did a good job of summarizing. So we'll hear from the applicant, and my suggestion would be to I understand the project. I reviewed all the drawings, and it's a beautiful site and great views. That you address the conditions 1 through 15. If you want to comment on something, I don't need to do a virtual walk through the house or around it. I've studied it, and most likely will be continued. But if you want to share the screen and address the conditions or any other comment, welcome to hear them. And let's see if we can get this started here on the right track. Who's on the screen?
This is Nicole.
Yeah, good morning.
Matt Garcia with Matt Garcia Design. Thank you for your time. It's not it. Just 1 second.
What are you looking for?
Just presentation view. Sweet. Okay. All right. So we are also going to present these together as well. I think it is makes no sense to do it that way. So we just want to start with, I know you're familiar with the project, you've looked at all the drawings, but we do want to point out just the site context again, the steepness of the site. We have from the front of the lot to the rear of the lot, we have a 70-foot elevation gain. It is a 60% slope across both lots. And that slope does start immediately from the street and that property line. And then just a little bit more information on the site development and the site shoring. We've been working with Justin Peterson with GSI on the shoring design, John Butler with Troutner on geotech, David Belode with civil, or for civil, and then Mike Arbany with Colorado structural for the structural. And we started here, and how we developed the site is just how our design evolved. And it was important, this is a little bit of a better view, to understand what the most efficient way to get both of these residents developed at the same time was, and that involves doing a permanent nail or permanent soil nail shoring across the rear setback lines, and that would span both properties. And then on the sides, we would get micropile shoring, and that's on the east side of lot 2R and the west side of lot 1R. And this is based off of Justin's recommendation on the most stable and efficient way to develop these sites with this much percentage of slope. And then with Mark Arbany's consulting on the foundation of the house, it is not recommended to use those shoring walls as the foundation wall. And so what happens is we're required to have separate foundation walls for the actual structure of the home. And what happens here is we end up with space between our shoring walls and our structural walls of the house. And then this requires us to infill between the shoring walls and the structure. So that is where our terracing comes in. We terraced as close as we possibly could to get back to that natural grade in a way that made sense structurally and coming back with dirt. Now, I think there is argument that maybe instead of terracing completely flat, maybe we can go ahead and start to gain a little bit more of that extra slope to get it back up to natural grade. But we just wanted to clarify that it doesn't seem feasible with the way that the site needs to be built to actually maintain undisturbed natural grade. Again, I think there's a little bit of compromise on trying to come back as close as possible to that slope. It just won't be existing grade, especially between the two lots.
Okay.
Okay, so then, yeah, so we can kind of get into the actual comments themselves. Those two, the first comment 1 and 3 are more or less addressed in how we have to cut the site. Comment number 2 on the large retaining wall at the front of the site, we can definitely look at making those 2 walls, a 10-foot wall and 15 wall, less steep. We understand the concern of that comment. And then a quick, just general overview of mass scale and form from the perspective of the street. And we'll jump into the comments quickly here, but I just wanted to point out the scale in reference to the neighboring house. We feel like it fits in quite well. You'll see, the width of our homes, which obviously is determined by our setbacks, is significantly less wide in scale than the neighboring home. And also due to the fact that our slope is so steep, the only location for decks is on the front of the house, and that neighboring house also uses a similar strategy. Okay, so comment 4 on the deck size. So that the front deck on both those properties are pretty moderate in size. They're 10 feet and 9 feet. Lot 1R is 10 feet and lot 2R is 9 feet in depth. And because of the way that the garage level, basement level steps forward, they're actually only overhanging 6 feet and 7.5 feet past that garage front. So it's pretty modest. We do understand the concern at the wraparound, and I think we could potentially compromise with stepping back slightly just so that it doesn't seem like a perceived long deck all the way to the property line. But we do also want to point out that, you know, with this lot being so steep, there needs to be some sort of provided amenity for outdoor space, and the front of the lot is the only location for those decks. And also one last point is those decks, as well as the overhangs, which gets a little bit into comment 5, they're helping break up that mass. And so when we start to reduce those significantly, the actual massing of the building is going to become more evident. From the street level, those overhangs hide the massing that's happening as it terraces back. For the roof overhangs on the south facade, similar comment. I think we can reduce those overhangs a foot or two, but I do think it is helping with the massing. And it also, I want to point out code ES 3A2, where it says use design features such as solid deck railings, 2/3 light doors, and roof overhangs, which block light from the building. So really, I mean, the overhangs are important for light spill, to control light spill. It's important for passive design. You know, majority of our windows are on the south side, which is because of the steepness of the lot, and we need those overhangs for just passive design of the house. But again, we can reduce and scale a foot or two. Let's see, this is same comments, but just on the other property. So again, this corner here, where we are protruding quite far out, we can look at pushing that back a little bit for the deck railings. And then same idea with these overhangs. We feel like they do step back pretty nicely, and we can kind of trim off a little bit here to help with that. Comment 6, revise foundation material dimensions. We can definitely look at that. We'll look at a larger scale that is more historically found. Clear distinction between foundation and wall material and siding. We understand that comment. And again, we'll just have to look at that once we start looking at, you know, how the terracing develop over the project. Comment 8 on the board form planters at the street. That comment's understood. I think board form planters are seen throughout town, but I do understand just with our driveway and our paving that it does start to look like a little concrete, so we can start to break that up and make that look a little less formal. Comment 13, provide a planting schedule. We will do that. Comment 9, this is kind of the last one that we have a little bit of concern with, reducing the size of doors on the first and second level. This seems to be a common thing with projects similar to ours. We are showing 2/3 light with our overhangs. That's going to also reduce light spill. We will comply with the railing comment, which we'll get to later. So I think with all of those things in conjunction, I think that's going to help significantly with light spill in those areas.
What's the height right now on those doors?
They are 10-foot doors. they have the 2/3 light.
Yeah.
I do want to also point out that at both those levels, so the space on the main level, that first living level is the living room. And then the space off the space above that is the primary bedroom, and both of those spaces will require a pretty minimal amount of lumen output. Those are areas that just don't need to be lit heavily. So I do want to point that out. And then also, I mean, on that main level, we don't have any other windows. There's no other form of glass or light that's emitting off that elevation. And then almost similarly, with that second level, there really, from a percentage of glass, there really isn't any more than there is on the upper level. It's just coming out of one elevation or, one spot. So that is one that we are just trying to push a little bit. HARC comment 10, that is remove can lights and sconces at upper levels. That won't be an issue. Comment 11, reduce number of fixtures as to not light the area at the same time. We will come into compliance with this. I do, and we can clear this up later if we need to, but I just wanted to confirm on what location that was referencing, if it was the amount of can lights in the soffits, because otherwise I think the sconces that we have are pretty minimal and are only lighting one space. Revise the deck railings to a mix of transparent and solid for comment 12. We can absolutely do that. I do want to point out that on lot 2R, we are proposing, it's maybe not as obvious in our model images, but we are proposing a perforated metal railing. So I just want to clarify if that is adequate or not. But for lot 1R, we can look at.
Normally it's a perforated steel that, I mean,
Yes,
that's
absolutely. And that's what we're showing. We have that material sample at the end of that drawing set. And then comment 4, utility locations, we will show that. And then comment 15 on the trash enclosure. This one also seems to be pretty common on this type of a lot. And I think for us, we'll definitely look into making this more compliant. We just want to confirm that because our site slopes immediately from the street, regardless of whether it's in the setback or not, the back and the side that is up against the grade cannot be open. And so the two sides that are left are the front and then the driveway side. And so it was just an understanding of what does open mean? Did it need to be 100% open? Are we talking, just perforate, a screen? It was just a little more of a clarification on that, but we'll definitely look at making that not a fully enclosed space. I think that really covers everything. We're happy to answer any questions.
okay. Well, thank you. And by the way, staff would be glad to work with you. And I see the perforated, I think a little more perforated, or maybe 20% plus or minus openings probably on the steep hill side would be better. But again, staff can work with you. And I realize this is a difficult lot, but I could point to a dozen, and staff could share more of them, although I think maybe they did share some that have had as steep, not many steeper than yours, but as steep, and they've solved these problems. And I thought that, I don't really have any questions, because when I look at the red line marks that Erica made on the drawings, and maybe it's not quite this simple, but if you complied with those, you could be one and done here. But I don't have any questions. Let's see if the public has any comment. But except for the last thing I would say is that these are not just comments, they're real conditions, and opinions don't matter in this room. It's the guidelines that, and yes, there's some interpretation of the guidelines, I understand, but these are ones we deal with every day, and we have a value to try to be, one of our 4 values to be consistent. So I think it's an exciting project. It's, great views, but, gonna have to find a way to comply. So I suggest you work with staff. So I don't have any questions. Any public comment?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
Can you go
Yes.
up to the
Do you want to
microphone,
speak
please,
into
sir?
that one?
State your name.
Yep, state your name and
Hi there, I'm Charlie Stevens, and I live at 856 Butcher Creek Road, basically across the street from where this project is taking place. So I thought it was worthwhile for my attendance to see what is going on. I wish I would have looked at the review a little earlier than I did. And I'm excited about the project. I think it's bringing some, but in terms of, I see a very modern building, which I'm okay with modern. Not at all like any of the surrounding buildings in the community. Knowing that we just recently won a court battle against Brighton and the other developments, we're probably in the middle of conforming this homeowners association, which involves the PUD and all of that. But I think from my personal perspective right now, and I would need clarification on the doors that face the front. Did I understand that they were from floor to ceiling window?
the 2/3 light on the bottom, you
2/3.
couldn't see it. Blacked off.
Because
10-foot
we did a major remodel 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I wanted windows, doors,
Yeah.
all the way across the front of our house.
Understood. Yeah.
And we were totally denied
Yeah.
because of light pollution.
Can't do that.
So we had to slide it to the side. And now we have some doors that go to the side, and we're limited to that 2/3. Floor to ceiling, nope, can't do that, light pollution. So from my perspective as a homeowner across the street, I just want this project to be treated equally to what we treated. And our outside is a barn siding. Is some kind of a telluride stone that's all kind of variations. It's really a cool stone. You don't look and just see what looks like concrete that's been kind of manipulated. I do have a little bit of a concern with the terraces, because I look across the street now. I see elk right behind my house. I see deer that go right between the Sante's house and where these 2 projects are going. All of that's going to be eliminated. I understand that. That is what progress is. But I'm not sure if the view of seeing a bunch of terraces with stones covered in concrete or however they're going to wrap around, similar to the old brewery. I'm just voicing that it's not going to look at all like it looks right now. Maybe there's some way they can make it look a little less terraced with stones and so rigid. Maybe make it look a little more like it fits into the environment. And beyond that, I know this is not the time, and I'd like someone to tell me when they get ready for this project. Parking on our road is the high school parks all over our road. That whole side of the road where you're doing the construction is no parking from November 1st through April 1st. So I'm concerned where all these construction vehicles are going to be. I'm also concerned, where are they staging this project? Because there's going to be all kinds of equipment. Where is all this going? There's the last 2 lots across the street. So all of those I'd like to have somebody address. I don't know if this is the appropriate time or some other-
No, it's the building department. Unfortunately, we can't have dialogue back and forth, but I appreciate the points you've made.
Okay.
And however, the applicant can make comment. But the building department who has the purview on parking and construction.
Can I just make a comment? You're welcome to reach out to me and I can connect you with Rick.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron.
So would the applicant like to have any rebuttal or comments to the concern of the neighbor? Unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, we totally hear you with the terracing. Nicole and I are kind of sketching out an option that, definitely falls more into natural grade and can make it look, less rigid, soften it I think is kind of what we're picking up from everybody on the infill between the two projects is just softening that and trying to get, just make it a little bit more natural grade. So I think we have something that we can look at and share with you guys, and I think make you guys feel better about that.
Thank you for listening.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other public comment online? Raise your hand electronically. No, don't see any. So we're going to continue this, and I would ask staff, I don't know what you've got on my plate in May, but
Yes.
is it June or? May?
So the memo, it can be continued to May 19th or June 16th. I believe we could ask the applicant and see if they have a
Okay.
preference.
So do you have a preference? Do you think you could get all this done by
Absolutely.
May 19th?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can, okay. And then, okay, again, this deliberations, I would encourage you to get with staff before, because we have a policy that if you come back and still have mass and scale violations and more than 8 or 10 conditions, it's going to go to the end of the line. So you got to work with staff hand in hand and get this right. And also the other thing is that you may not have known, although I think staff usually makes people aware, the fastest way to get through this when you have a complex site and so forth and project is to have a work session. And when you go through a work session, you think, oh no, another meeting. But when you do a work session, you go to the front of the line because you're getting credit for actually where we can have dialogue back and forth, more of a partnering effort. But we're here now, and we're going to continue this. So I'm going to move to continue. Actually, Piper, do you want both read individually on the continuances?
Yes.
Yes,
'Cause-
Okay. So we will do them individually. I move to continue to the May 19th chair meeting, the minor scale application at 857 Butcher Creek, Lot 2R, Butcher Creek PUD, based on the findings in the staff memo dated March 17th, 2023, with the following conditions 1 through 15 as written. I don't really have any to add. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided at a public hearing held on March 17th, 2023, with notice such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. The rest as written. And for your second project with the identical conditions and similar challenges, I'm going to move to continue to the May 19th chair meeting, the minor scale application at 877 Butcher Creek, Lot 1R, Butcher Creek PUD, based on the findings, the staff memo dated March 17th, 2023, the following conditions 1 through 15 is written. This motion is based on evidence testimony provided at a public hearing held on March 17th, 2023, with notice such hearing right as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. So good luck. We'll look forward to seeing you in May. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will adjourn at 10:32. Thank you all.